what happens if you forget the rules? The 3 rules we just learned, what if you forget them? Well, you are likely going to end up doing 1 of 6 plagiarism mistakes, and 5 of the 6 come from, actually all 6 come from using someone else's words. Using someone else's words. And remember that if it's plagiarism, that means that we haven't done all 3. We haven't put the verbatim words in quotation marks. We haven't used in-text citation or we haven't done a reference. All 3 need to be met. So if you use someone else's words and you put in quotation marks and you use an in-text citation but you don't do a reference, it's plagiarism. If you don't use quotation marks but you use an in-text citation and a reference, it's plagiarism. You have to have all 3 in order for it to not be plagiarism. So remember our definition, our rule. To use someone else's words, you have to use all 3 elements, which is quotation marks, citation, and a reference. So if you use someone else's words and you fail to do at least all of those 3 things and you plagiarize, you've likely done 1 of these 6. So the goal of this video is just to walk you through what the 6 major ways to plagiarize using someone else's words are. And then in the following video, we'll talk about how to correct this. So for right now, just simply take notes of the different ways, and if you're guilty, or you have been, because we're not doing this now, right? If you have been guilty accidentally or intentionally of doing this in the past, now you'll know, right? So by identifying it, hopefully you can stop it. Okay, so what are these 6 major ways that students plagiarize the words of others? Well, the first one is a little bit obvious, and it makes your professor want to rip their hair out. The first one is when you copy and paste verbatim. You don't change anything. You don't use quotation marks. You don't cite. You don't reference. This is the bulk of what professors see. And it is not just me. we all see it. Students will copy and paste. A lot of time it will be digital. They'll be online and they'll be copying and pasting digital work, and they'll go to one source, copy, sentence, paste it, go to another source, copy and paste, and their whole entire report or essay or their submission is just a bunch of random copies and pasting. There's no quotation marks given, no citations, no references, and they just turn it in with their name on. So that is the first violation, and that is the worst. That is the worst. Remember my golden rule. My golden rule. Never, ever, ever, are you listening? Never, ever copy and paste. Never, 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 never copy and paste. Did you get that? Never copy and paste. All right, so that's the golden rule, right? And where students get in the biggest trouble and the most trouble and trouble the most often is they copy and paste. Now, this doesn't have to be digitally. Sometimes students will be using the textbook, and some of my courses we use just the textbook, and students are told to stay offline because cheating is such a problem online. So they're instructed to not go online and to use just the textbook. But they will have the textbook in front of them and then type, copy verbatim the words of the textbook. And it's all the same. So no matter what source you're getting your verbatim language from, if you're getting it verbatim, it's plagiarism, okay? Unless you have all 3 elements met. So never, never, never again are you, savvy student, going to just copy and paste and do nothing else. Remember, it is plagiarism if you're using someone else's words, unless you use quotation marks, an in-text citation, and a reference. If you do not have all 3, you have plagiarized, okay? And we are not doing that. We are far too smart for that. Okay, so the 6 things. The first one was just copying and pasting, using verbatim language, doing nothing else, copying and pasting. Remember, we don't want to just copy and paste and just, even if we put quotation marks on it, we don't want to do that to a whole sentence, right? It's sloppy, it's lazy, it's not going to sound good, it's not going to blend with your own words. You're going to end up with a paper that sounds like it has multiple authors, because it does. We don't want to do that. Okay, so just pick out the words that are important and use all three elements. If you don't, you've plagiarized. Okay, so number one, copying and pasting or typing verbatim language without meeting the three elements. Number two, okay, and I'm going to say that five of these six have to do with copying and pasting verbatim. Okay, so again, if you do not copy and paste, you can avoid these. You can avoid these, right? So don't copy and paste. Number two is copying and pasting and then switching the first half of the sentence with the second half of the sentence. Okay, and of course without doing the three required elements. So with all of these, if you use the three required elements, it's not plagiarism, right? It may not sound good and you may not have a smooth flowing paper, but you're going to avoid plagiarism, right? And that's our biggest goal here, is not plagiarizing. Okay, so if you swap the first half of the sentence and the second half of the sentence, or if it's a really long sentence and there's a lot of commas and they could be broken down into several smaller sentences and you're just rearranging and flipping the order, that is still plagiarism, right? It doesn't suddenly become your own words from your own thoughts just because you've switched the order. Okay, so switching the order is still plagiarism. Okay, so for number two, you're just switching the order. I call this an order switch. Okay, number three, you're still copying and pasting, right? So you're still taking the verbatim language along with the words, thoughts, and concepts of someone else, but you're doing what I call a word swap. You're taking a word here or there, maybe a couple words here or there, and you're taking that verbatim sentence or paragraph or passage that you've copied and pasted, and you're swapping out a couple words to try to pass it off as your own. And let me tell you, if your brain is telling you to take action to avoid getting caught or to avoid someone catching on to the fact that you're doing something you know you shouldn't, and you're like, oh shoot, let me change it a couple words so that this doesn't match verbatim, you know you're plagiarizing. Okay, you know you're doing it. So we just want to avoid all that altogether, right? So if you're not copying and pasting, we never have to worry about things being used verbatim. You're also not staring at the reference, right? The original reference, and we'll talk more about that in a later video, but we don't want to copy and paste. We don't want to take anything verbatim. We also don't want to do a word swap, which is number three. So we're not going to go to the thesaurus and look up different ways to say the word business, or to say the word violate, or to say any other word that would try to allow us to use verbatim language of someone else without properly giving them credit, right? It's really just comes down to, most of the time, just laziness. Like, I know it's quick and easy to just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, and not take the time to pull quotation marks around it. I know, right? To do the quick citation at the end and to put it in the reference. I get that. But again, it's cheating if you don't. You're depriving the author that spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and hard work coming up with that material that you're stealing from. It's not good academic ethics, and we just don't want to do it. Okay, so yes, I know it takes longer, but again, we're learning to take that time because we don't want to plagiarize. We want to be upstanding, ethical students. We don't want to plagiarize. Number four, I call this, number four, the word drop. So sentences are still being copied and pasted verbatim, but students will delete. They'll just go in randomly and just delete a couple words to pass off the words as their own. Okay, what happens though is that students often pick important words to drop, not fully understanding the topic, because they're trying to be as fast as possible and to not spend the time to understand the material. But when they drop really important words that it does change the meaning. For example, if you drop the word many, okay, and then if you don't say many and you're just making it sound like a statement as if it always applies, and it doesn't always apply, not only do you have completely incorrect research and you've made an incorrect statement, but now you're wrong and you've plagiarized. So we don't want to do a word drop, okay? No word drops. Number 5 is word jumble. It's what I call the word jumble. With this, what it seems to me a lot of times is that students will take someone else's words, write them down or type them up and print it out, take a pair of scissors, cut out each word individually, put it into a cup, shake up the cup, dump the words out on the paper, and wherever the words land in that order, the students will use that order to form their sentences and their passage. Again, none of these methods make the words your words just because you flip them around. There is no way to take someone else's words and rearrange them or move them or slightly swap them out for a word that means the same thing, or to mix them up. Like if you've ever seen that game or played the game where you put the little tiny like ping pong ball under the cups and you shuffle around the cups. It doesn't matter. Like you can do all the shuffling you want to. It doesn't make it not plagiarism, right? So with all of these things, it's still plagiarism. Okay, so no word jumbling. Okay, we're not shaking around the words trying to pass them off as our own. Okay, we're down to the very last one, number 6. This one is, I'm not sure which is worse, this one or copying and pasting every single sentence in your papers. But if you're not writing the work yourself, if you're not doing the homework or the essay, whatever it is, if you're not doing it yourself, if someone else is doing it for you, that's plagiarism. That's plagiarism because you're putting your name on it and it's not your words, it's not your thoughts, ideas, and concepts. That's plagiarism. Okay, so the consequences that we talked about in a previous video, it still applies. It's still cheating. It's still plagiarism, right? In order for it to not be plagiarism, you need to credit the source. And if someone else is writing your paper, whether it's a family member and they volunteered, whether you've hired someone, yes, we know about contract cheating. Yes. Most of your professors have doctorate degrees or at least a master's degree, and I can tell you, they don't hand law degrees to idiots. So yes, I know about contract cheating. Yes, most of the ways you guys cheat, I know about it. Not to say that it's easy or even realistic to catch every single one, but the goal is not to not get caught. The goal is to, again, be ethical in your writing. Okay, so do your own homework, right? You've paid all this money to get an education, so I mean, it wouldn't hurt you while you're here to actually get educated. So these are the 6 ways that students plagiarize. Most of the time it's intentional. If you're copying and pasting, in my mind, there's absolutely no way to do that accidentally. So to me, when I find copying and pasting, it feels very intentional. So it doesn't oftentimes matter what the explanation or excuse is. And most of the students that do it, they do admit that yes, either they didn't do it on their own or someone did it for them. Maybe they didn't know that whoever they had asked or accepted help from or hired to do their homework, maybe they didn't know that the person was just going to copy and paste and just blatantly, very obviously cheat and plagiarize. And yes, that does happen most of the time, is that when you get someone to do your homework for you, you're often not getting someone who is any more capable or qualified than you to do your homework, and they plagiarize. It's better to just be safe and just do your own homework. It's a whole lot safer. Yes, it's harder. Yes, it takes time, but again, that's why we're here. So those are our 6 things. Again, make sure that you've taken notes and that you've written down all of these 6 ways, okay? If you're one of my students, you will have a plagiarism quiz and I will ask you what the 6 ways are. Okay, so again, number 1 is just copying, pasting, and doing nothing else. You're making no changes, you're just copying and pasting. Number 2 is a copy and paste with an order change. right? You're flopping the front half of the sentence to make it the back half of the sentence, the back half to be the front half. Number 3 is your word swapping. You're doing a word swap, right? You're using a thesaurus, or you're coming up with something similar, a synonym, and you're just pulling out one word and sticking in a word that means the exact same thing. Okay, number 4 is a word drop. Instead of swapping out the words, you're just, maybe it takes too much effort to swap them out, so you're just gonna delete, just gonna periodically delete words. That is a word drop. Okay, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna word drop. And number 5 is the word jumbo. A word jumble, we're not going to jumble up the words trying to pass them off as our own. It will not work. And we are not going to have anyone else write our homework or essay or our report for us, right? These are all the common ways that students plagiarize. And these are the 6 things that we absolutely want to avoid. Okay, so it's really easy just to say don't plagiarize, but most students, intentionally or unintentionally, have done one of those 6 things at some point in their academic career. So these are the 6 things that you want to keep in mind, because sometimes it does happen accidentally. So if you catch that you're doing any of these 6 things, just hopefully alarm bells will be going off, and you'll remember, like, oh my gosh, that's number 3 on the list of the 6 ways to plagiarize. So let me catch this and let me fix this. Okay, so if you find that you've done one of these 6 things, what do you do? We will cover that in the very next video.